This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome. From Johannesburg here in South Africa, I'm Evan Jansen. This show is live. It's broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We are also streaming live on YouTube right now with the whole show available on demand on our YouTube channel. Now today we're back in Limpopo, Polokwane to be exact, as the province struggles to come to terms with the loss of one of its iconic leaders. We look ahead to World Tuberculosis Day next week with a focus on drug-resistant TB. The world's first penile transplant here in South Africa has caused quite a stir worldwide. We'll also deal with International Book Week, Pretoria's business boom, and the Cricket World Cup, where South Africa are in a do-or-die scenario tomorrow. But first, let's take a look at the news headlines. Social Development Minister Badabili Dlamini led a brief tribute to the late Public Service and Administration Minister Collins Chabane. There's still no final word on when the funeral service will be held for Ministers Chabane and his two VIP protectors, Lesiba Sekele and Lawrence Letswane. Their memorial service will be held on Thursday at a venue that is still to be announced. All three were killed in a crash on the N1 near Polokwane at the weekend. Meanwhile, the presidency has invited South Africans to pay their final respects and sign condolence books, which have been placed in various areas across the country.
Our country has lost a gallant fighter, a good colleague, whose thoughts and deeds always reflected his efforts to promote the values and aims of our government.
The Committee on State Funerals will be meeting at 12 o'clock today here in Cape Town to finalize all the arrangements, both for the memorial service, which is expected to be on Thursday in Pretoria, details of which we'll be able to announce after 12 o'clock meeting, as well as the funeral on Saturday. Mr. Letswane, as well as Sekele, they also lost their lives.
The driver of the truck involved in the accident that claimed the life of the Public Service and Administration Minister will appear in the Polokwane Magistrates Court today. Chabane and his two bodyguards, Sergeant Lesiba Seleko and Sergeant Lawrence Letswane, were killed instantly when a truck allegedly did a U-turn in front of their car on the N1 near Polokwane in the early hours of Sunday morning. The truck driver was not injured. He was arrested on the scene and charged with culpable homicide. The National Assembly will this afternoon debate a motion of no confidence brought by the DA, President Jacob Zuma. This is the second motion of no confidence brought against President Zuma in the recent past. The first one, brought by Gang SA a few weeks ago, was withdrawn at the 11th hour. DA parliamentary leader Musi Maimane says debates of this nature are important as they reflect on the president's fitness to hold office. ANC caucus chairperson Moloto Matapo says ANC members of parliament are ready to reaffirm their confidence in the leadership of President Jacob Zuma. The party has described the DA's motion against the president as baseless and a waste of time. Thousands of Lesotho nationals are expected to attend and watch the swearing-in ceremony of Prime Minister-elect Pagalita Mosisili in the presence of King Letsie III this morning. SADC facilitator Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa and Minister of International Relations Martin Kwana Mashabane have arrived in the country already. President Jacob Zuma is expected to arrive there this morning. They will be among dignitaries from other SADC member states. And Israelis are voting in early parliamentary elections following a campaign focused on economic issues such as the high cost of living rather than fears of a nuclear Iran or the Israeli-Arab conflict. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appealed to his hardline base at the last minute, saying a Palestinian state would not be established if he is elected to a fourth term. Netanyahu's main challenger is Isaac Herzog of the centre-left Zionist Union. And in cricket, South Africa believe they will peak at just the right time at the ICC Cricket World Cup in Australia. And to add to that, coach Russell Domingo says he also has a gut feeling that Quinton de Kock's match-winning innings is just around the corner. But Sri Lankan great and chief selector Sanath Jayasuriya says tomorrow's quarter-final match in Sydney is simply too close to call. Well, we were going to speak to the Premier, Stanley Matabata, in Polokwane. We are waiting for him to arrive at our offices in Polokwane. We'll move to our next story in Cape Town. Is the Premier there? Good morning, Mr. Premier, Mr. Stanley Matabata. It's Evan Jansen here in Johannesburg. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, thank you for joining us this morning, sir. I understand it's been a very difficult couple of days for you personally, I'm sure, Mr. Premier. I'd like you to tell us, South Africans, how popular Minister Chabane really was with the people of Limpopo, especially in the Phalaborwa municipality, where he hails from.
Yes, good morning, Evan, and good morning to your listeners also. Honorable Chabane was very, very, very popular because he was a person who was down to earth. He was basically on the ground with the people. He is not from the Phalaborwa municipality. He was actually from Malamulela, the other side at Mutale, of Mutale municipality. So, well, as a person who grew up there and a person who was always there when the people needed him, he was liked by everybody, to such an extent that you would find that even when he was playing music, wherever in the province, people from that area will always follow him. Honorable Chabane was actually not only popular in that area, as you would know, he was a national leader. He was popular everywhere else. I started knowing about him when I was in Cape Town long ago, before the unbanning of the organizations. And when he came out of prison, I met him. I was amongst the first people who met him when he came out of Robben Island, because I met him I went to fetch him at Kaule House. Kaule House is in Cape Town. And then I stayed for 2 days with him. And I was, in fact, very impressed by the way in which he showed his love to the people of South Africa, and the way he was talking passionately about the movement, the African National Congress. He would want to know as to what is happening back at home. He would ask me about everybody who was in the then interim committee individually. On a daily basis, he would ask you about the convener, Thabo Makunyane. He would ask you about the people who were basically forming part of the interim committee that was leading the movement on the ground, just to ascertain himself that the movement was in good hands. Comrade Chabane was actually an agent of change and a unifier, because whenever we had problems, when I was serving with him in the Provincial Executive Committee of the ANC in this province, he was the secretary of the Executive Committee that time. He would always make it a point that he reach out to all of us. It was difficult times that time. The ANC did not have resources at that time, but you will make it. You would go all out in taxis with a paper bag, trying to visit all of us. That time I was in Mutse. Mutse is very far from Polokwane, but you would come in a taxi there as the provincial. Then we were called regions, not yet provinces. Yeah. You would visit us and and make sure that he organizes the African National Congress on the ground.
It's a massive loss for the province. It's a massive loss for you. You've lost a comrade and a brother. How do you feel today? It's a big personal loss for yourself. And then how do you see the province observing this loss in the days and week to come?
You know, we normally say there is no person who's irreplaceable. But I doubt if this void that Comrade Collins has left to the movement, the void that Minister Chabane has left to the cabinet, the void that Minister Chabane has left to the people of Limpopo, we will be in the position to can get somebody equally capable, with all the expertise, with all the humor and the humbleness, because he was a very modest person, remember. I wonder if we will be in the position to can get such a person. A very brilliant comrade, a strategist par excellence. I don't know how to qualify a Comrade Collins, but really, I must say it will be very difficult to fill that void that he left to us.
Mr. Premier, I've travelled recently to the Marula Festival in Phalaborwa, visited with Minister Chabane. What I found was an administration, a political system within the province that was very mature, with almost everyone involved in the political life within the province. Was this a central theme of the leadership style of Minister Chabane?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I'm saying, he was a complete person. He was, should I say, he was a person that you would say he was a multi-skilled person. You look into the administration, he was very good, as I have already said. He was running the office of the ANC in the province for many years. I think he was the longest serving secretary, provincial secretary of the ANC. And he was also good as a politician. He was a commissar. When he was addressing people every day, all the time, when we listened to him addressing people, I can rest assure you that everybody was learning out of what Honorable Chabane was saying. And like I said, he was also a strategist and a very good listener, because you would find that you are in a workshop or something of that nature. He would listen attentively to you, because, again, I worked with him in the Department of Economic Development. He was my MAC then. And really, you would find that we are in a workshop, we are busy with very complicated economic issues. He would listen to you. But ultimately, at the end of the discussion, he will then come up with a solution to whatever problem that you are discussing, harmonizing all the divergent views that you are presenting in that argument.
Mr. Premier, thank you for coming through. It's a very difficult time. It's a very difficult time for the province of Limpopo. They've lost one of the cogs in the wheel of that province this week. Minister of Public Service and Administration, Collins Chabane, of course, passed away early on in the early hours of Sunday morning in a tragic car accident. A man who is well loved in his own province, but also around the rest of the country. Some of your views now that we've been looking at on Pumlani. Nchapeka says, Comrade Chabane, my leader, my big brother. That is a sentiment shared by many today. Khachela Sarachi says, civil servants and politicians should be exemplary in obeying the law. We are all VIP, says Khachela. Deboko Poe says, Mr. Chabane passing is a shock. We will be remembered as humble, talented servant of the people. Gone too soon. Yes, much too soon. 54 years old. Lelama Marigazela says, we can't vilify the truck driver and then turn a blind eye to the speeding. Let's be consistent. Let's not prejudge it, Lelama. Let's wait for the courts to make those decisions. None of us knows what happened. It's a little bit too early to jump the gun and start flinging things around on social media as we do. However, we have to move on. Judgment has been reserved in the Cape Town High Court case brought by the Democratic Alliance seeking clarification on the constitutionality of sections of the Powers and Privileges Act of Parliament. This law empowers the Speaker to call the security services to arrest or remove people who cause a disturbance in the House. The DA argues that this law violates members' constitutional right to freedom of speech and freedom not to be arrested for what they say in Parliament. Now, our parliamentary reporter, Manalisi Dubasi, was at the Cape High Court yesterday. He joins us in our parliamentary studio. Very good morning to you, Manalisi. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much, Evan.
Tell us about your day in court. What came out, Manalisi?
Well, In short, even this case was reserved. But basically, as you said, that you'd remember that it arose from the disturbances of last year on the 21st of August, and again during SONA. Now, the DA says that this section of this act of the Powers, Privileges, Immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act that was enacted in 2004 is at odds with the Constitution. In particular, Section 58, if you read it with Section 71 of the Constitution, that says that members of Parliament are not liable for arrest for anything they say in Parliament or anything they produce or they submit in Parliament, even in the committees of Parliament. But that section says that, in cases of disturbances, they can be removed and arrested. So they say that it is at odds with those Section 58 and 71 of the Constitution. In any case, lawyers of Parliament, they argue that that section gives the presiding officers mechanisms to control the proceedings in Parliament. So there were those counter arguments. But the judge, Andre Lagrange, reserve his judgment. I'm sure he'll be making it very soon.
Manalisi, it's easy to highlight problems that we have. What are the solutions then that the DA is putting forward to deal with disruptions within the House?
Well, they argue that, first of all, you need to have, for instance, the Speaker of Parliament who's not going to take sides. You know that most of, in fact, in many instances, they've been complaining that the Speaker of Parliament, Speaker Mbete, is protecting the ANC and the President in particular at all odds. And they say that is the cause, the cause of the problems in Parliament, or most of the problems here in Parliament that results in these disturbances. So they say that these sections actually, what they do, they give a carte blanche, authority to the Speaker, to do whatever she wants. She can remove them. She can call the security to be removed from Parliament if she feels that they are causing disturbances in the House.
But Elisi, when do we expect judgment or an outcome in this matter then?
Well, the judge really didn't put time frames, but I'm sure Eben is going to be very quick, this judgment, because it is a matter of urgent. But it might as well land at the Constitutional Court, because what we're dealing with here is a constitutional matter, because Section 58, the one which I say if you read it with Section 71, these are constitutional matters. So the judge might either make his judgment or refer this thing directly to the Constitutional Court. Or if any other party lose, it might as well take it to the Constitutional Court, because really what we're dealing with here is a constitutional matter.
Mandalisi, thank you very much for your insights and an update after yesterday's interesting court case. Of course, judgment has been reserved in the Cape High Court in this action brought by the DA, seeking clarification on the constitutionality of sections of the Powers and Privileges Act of Parliament. Now, we move on. Our tweet of the day comes from Clayson Monyela. Now, I'm sure you all know who this is. It's one thing for a leader to pass on, but the transition in such a horrific crash makes the pain unbearable, devastating, says Clayson Monyela. Yes, Clayton, this is a sentiment shared by all that knew Collins Chabane and all South Africans. It was such shocking news over the weekend. But let's take a look at what's happening elsewhere in the world. Of course, in Israel, big day. The Jerusalem Post says nearly 6 million voters will be eligible to cast ballots in more than 10,000 polling stations across the country today in an election that's expected to attract the highest ever voter turnout. That's since 1999. We move down under in Australia. The Australian says the fate of thousands of people in Vanuatu, including scores of Australians, was last night unknown, with communications cut and rescuers struggling to get to many of the archipelago's islands in the wake of Cyclone Pan. Then in China, the South China Morning Post, the death of disgraced former General Chu Kai-ho is on Sunday did not mean the end of graft investigations into people linked to him. That was released by the military yesterday. They vowed to press on with a crackdown on corruption in that country. Let's now take a look at what's happening across our country here today. We start in Polokwane, the magistrate's court there, where the truck driver was involved in the crash that killed Public Service Minister Colin Shabane and his bodyguards, Isiba Sekele and Lawrence Letswane, is expected to appear there today. In Johannesburg, the High Court sitting in Palm Ridge, the trial of Lindri Kaku is expected to resume. Kaku faces no less than 18 charges, including the killing of 3-year-old Luke Tibbets. And then in the Johannesburg Labour Court, South African Police Service whistleblower Colonel Kobus Rus will challenge his demotion by ex-crime intelligence boss Richard Nduli. That's what's happening around the country today. Time for us to take a break. This is Newsroom here on SABC News.
Cameroon's economic capital, a unique art collection is on display. Titled Yesterday's Memory, Tomorrow's Memory.
We are trying to preserve this heritage despite many things that have changed in the designing, embroidery and the model.
If I'm telling you, you don't like it, I call it defeat.
Join Musam Khalipi on Afro Showbiz every Saturday at 19:30 CAT.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom. Next week is World Tuberculosis Day, and once again the world will focus attention on one of the top global health challenges. More than 2 billion people, or 1/3 of the world's population, are infected with TB. Research suggests that out of the overall 13 million TB cases in 2013, 9 million were new. Out of these cases, 3 million people were either not diagnosed, not treated, or not officially registered by the national TB programs. This results in many of those people following unknown treatments, infect others, or ending up losing their lives. Now, joining us in Cape Town today is Doctors Without Borders, Dr. Jennifer Hughes, who is quickly becoming one of the world's foremost experts on drug-resistant TB as a result of her work on the disease in Khayelitsha over the past few months. Very good morning to you, Dr. Hughes. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you.
TB was once thought to have almost been eradicated in the world, but we see these massive increases, it seems. What do you think are the main reasons behind this?
So TB never really went away. It's a disease which can lie latent in people and can reactivate at any time during a person's lifetime, particularly if they have a dysfunctional immune system, such as when they get diabetes or HIV. And in a place like South Africa, where we have a high incidence of both of those diseases, tuberculosis is becoming more and more of a problem.
The numbers are quite alarming, and we've seen the last few years quite a rise in incidence of new strains. We hear about resistant TB and so forth. Can you explain the difference between normal TB and drug-resistant TB for us, please?
Yeah, so tuberculosis is a disease which most people know. You need treatment for 6 months. You take some tablets every day, and it has a high rate of cure if you complete your treatment course. Whereas drug-resistant TB is the same bacteria. It causes the same disease with the same symptoms, but it's a strain which has become resistant to the two most important drugs that we have to fight tuberculosis. And so with drug-resistant TB, you need a completely different course of treatment. The treatment lasts on average 2 years. You have to take lots of tablets together with an injection every single day, and it has lots of side effects associated with it. A lot of people can't cope with the arduous treatment journey, and so a lot of people default their treatment before the end of 2 years. Not only that, the treatment is really expensive, and it's much less effective than the other treatment that we have for normal TB.
Are drug companies, governments doing enough to deal with drug-resistant TB? Are we spending enough money?
There has certainly been a lot more interest in recent years in tackling TB and drug-resistant TB, and particularly in South Africa, where the government has really shown commitment to fighting the disease. So not only have they really committed to rolling out a new rapid diagnostic test to allow us to diagnose the treatment quickly, but it's also made some efforts to get people onto treatment more quickly by decentralizing. They have a policy of decentralization where they try and allow people to access their treatment, not just in specialized centers. This could be decentralized even more, so to make it easier for people to go to their local primary care clinic to receive treatment, but at least we're seeing the move in the right direction. In addition to this, the government here in South Africa has also committed to trying to access better drugs for drug-resistant TB.
Now, in a week's time, it will be World Tuberculosis Day. Doctors Without Borders, we're expecting you to release a comprehensive report on the project that you're working on in Khayelitsha. Without going into too much detail, can you just give us an idea what the report would sort of be looking at and what you'll be hoping to achieve with it?
Yes, so there are 3 main messages coming out of our report. The first is that decentralization of services to a primary care level is feasible. We've been doing it over the past at least 5 years, and the Department of Health, the local departments of health, have been working with MSF and have now taken over that program to deliver drug-resistant TB care to people in their local primary care clinic. So we've shown that it is possible, and it increases the number of people who are diagnosed and who can get on treatment. Not only that, but we've also shown that the cost of decentralization, or the cost of treating somebody in a primary care clinic, is nearly half that of sending people to hospital, to specialized hospitals for treatment. In addition, we've shown that it's really, really critical to support our patients through treatment. I've already said how long it is and how difficult it is to complete treatment, and so a lot of patient support is required, psychosocial, financial support, to enable patients to complete their drug-resistant TB treatment and reduce transmission in the community.
Well, I thank you for joining us today. That's Dr. Jennifer Hughes from Doctors Without Borders. She joined us live in Cape Town. We talk about tuberculosis. Next week is World Tuberculosis Day. South Africa is at the forefront of the fight against this disease. Let's have a look quickly at your tweets. What are we talking about? At SABC Newsroom, of course, is where you can tweet us. Now, there you have some pictures coming in from Vanuatu. Now, this is Cyclone Pam. It's hit New Zealand after devastating Vanuatu. New Zealand is bracing itself for this. You see an incredible picture. And there's a picture of the devastation, some of the scale of devastation. Fears of a food shortage in Vanuatu in the wake of Cyclone Pam's devastation. There you have that picture. And there you see, wow, there's a massive storm incoming over the ocean there. This is what a normal storm looks like over Port Bia and Vanuatu. Not a Category 5 cyclone like Pam. Well, that looks pretty threatening. There, Belinda Blair took this photo of Cyclone Pam, but at least locals should have plenty of meds, pharmacy today. Food shortages on the cards. You can see the devastation or the scale of the cyclone that's going through the South Pacific Islands there. Really, really incredible, the scale of the storm there. Now, we move on to probably the story of the week so far. A team from Stellenbosch University and the Tygerberg Hospital performed the first successful penile transplant. The operation that took place on the 11th of December last year. The boy was left with just 1 centimeter of his original penis during a traditional initiation ceremony. It's believed that more of the boys are disfigured and some die each year during these ceremonies, and those who live will need the transplant. Now, to talk to us more about this, we are joined today by Professor Andre van der Merwe, who is the head of Stellenbosch's Division of Urology. Very good morning to you, Dr. van der Merwe. Thank you very much for joining us, and I suppose congratulations is in order.
Good morning. Thank you very much. It was a great team effort.
It's been a really a really interesting week, I suppose. There's been a lot of hype around the world. Just tell us about the kind of the kind of hype that you've seen. I've seen in reports that your office have been inundated with people who want to get the operation now.
Yes, it had an incredible effect. I was completely surprised by the effect. Within hours after the press statement, we had contact from the international media, from international people. And also in South Africa, lots of people, then a lot of private people with genital problems, all sorts of genital problems, not only people with ritual circumcision that is now coming forward, who's been living in fear for years. They contacted us, but also people that's been born without a penis, people that just got genital problems. They want to discuss it, and obviously it's opened up a lot of things here.
Just tell us about the operation itself, how it was performed. Were there any attempts before this one?
Absolutely. We draw from an attempt in China in about 10 years ago, where they attempted to transplant a penis to somebody who lost his penis in an industrial accident. And unfortunately, at about 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks, it was removed due to the fact that the skin seemed to have either rejected or it was severely necrosing, wasn't looking good, and then the partner of the recipient insisted that the penis be removed. So we draw from that and change our techniques, learning from that. For instance, we had a very long psychological workup where we told the patient, what he's in for, what to expect. So the patient was really well prepared. And then, of course, warming up the penis after the operation. We didn't use an infrared lamp that the Chinese used. But we had very good blood supply to the penis thanks to the two microsurgeons that we contracted. But also we gave penile rehabilitation drugs to this patient to basically rehabilitate the penis at a very early stage. And I think that was the crux of getting such an early return to sexual function that really surprised us.
Now, I also see that in reports in the recent past that there's now a shortage, or you're on the lookout for donors. Have any donors come forward, and how do you become a donor?
Yes, I was surprised. I had an email from somebody that calls himself Agenda in the United States, and is going to remove all organs, and they're going to do this regardless, and then they want to donate the penis. But I'm a little bit cautious of this. The way that we would contract our donors is somebody that is in an accident and brain dead and would be an organ donor as such. Instead of only asking to harvest the kidneys and the heart if suitable, we will also ask to harvest the penis. And this was a problem for us because we always just got no in answer. Nobody wanted to donate a penis to, and leave a relative without a penis. So what we did for the last one was we offered to reconstruct a penis from the abdominal skin, or actually from the skin just on the side of the penis in the lower abdomen. And it looked really good, and the relatives could rest assured that the patient is going to the grave with somebody that looks very manly, and the dignity is not destroyed.
Now, quickly, Doc, what about costs, and how will this be classified in the future, do you think, as emergency or cosmetic surgery?
Well, at the moment, I like to think of it only indicated for people whose quality of life is so severely disrupted that they see themselves close to not having a life at all. And this is certainly the case of somebody who lost a penis during ritual circumcision, as you probably know some of the background of that and how they feel is a failure, and the whole psychological effect it is on a male losing a penis. So, but for people that just want an enhancement, I'm afraid I don't think it's the operation for that. There's a risk for the immune suppression to take. Of course, they can have all sorts of problems for long-term immune suppression, and one have to balance this risk with the advantage of having a penis. Therefore, we try to minimize this risk as much as possible.
Well, Doctor, you've done a fantastic job. Professor, I thank you for joining us. That's Professor Andre van der Merwe, who is the head of Stellenbosch University's Division of Urology. They've done the world's first penile transplant, I should say. They did it early in December last year. It's been a success, and it's reverberating all around the world. They're inundated with, well, hundreds and hundreds of requests for this procedure. But let's take a look at what's on our Facebook page now. There you'll see today, South Africa's Social Development Minister Badabile Dlamini has slammed the political declaration of the Commission on the Status of Women, arguing it made very little reference to women's human rights. Then the case against 4 men arrested in connection with last week's armed robbery of SABC TV journalists will start today. And finally, the driver whose truck was involved in a crash that killed Public Service and Administration Minister Collins Shabana and his 2 VIP protection officers is also due in court today. All of those stories and a whole lot more on our Newsroom Facebook page. Also, visit sabc.co.za/news for all the latest updates. Now, quick pick of the day. This one comes from Alex Cam, 100,000, and this deals with, well, he says 100,000 plus are likely to be homeless after Cyclone Pam hits Vanuatu. There you see a terrifying picture of the aftermath of this natural disaster in the South Pacific. Time for us to take a break. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News.
Didier Drogba, a footballer from Ivory Coast, was named as the third most influential celebrity in Africa.
Where I saw him display, he's a very nice player. He always make an impact.
Drogba donated his $5 million endorsement fee to the construction of a hospital in Abidjan.
Well, there are some lesser-known football stars in the continent that you haven't met.
Really?
And are deserving of more attention.
I think we will do better.
The Journal, every Saturday at 1:30 on SABC News.
Welcome back. This is Newsroom. Pretoria, a beautiful city with a rich history, is still celebrated by the famous buildings and monuments there. But this year, Pretoria will undergo upgrades to unlock the economic prospects the city holds for investors, especially in property. Today, well, we go to Cape Town to talk about Pretoria. We're joined there by the Group Marketing Manager of Protea Hotels, Nicholas Barenblatt, who will tell us more about this business boom. Very good morning, Nicholas. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
The need to uplift Pretoria, firstly. Tell us about that, and then tell us what you guys' plans are.
I think Pretoria has always been traditionally a node or area of the country that has always been seen as a very big corporate hub. But now we're starting to see a shift in trend in the sense of the amount of bulk infrastructure that has really been invested by Tshwane government and the municipality. It started in 2012. And they were firmly committed to improving bulk infrastructure to allow for development. As a result, we're starting to look at our interest there, and I'm happy to announce that as of this week, we opened another hotel, being the Protea Fire and Ice, which is our lifestyle brand offering, which is a very specific type of brand, very lifestyle orientated. It's not a brand you can put anywhere, and I think that shows true commitment from Protea Hotels and Marriott International to what Pretoria and what Menlyn has become as a node that's beyond corporate. It's become a very lifestyle-orientated node.
Tell us about the sudden interest of investors into the capital. Why are people now pumping money into the capital?
If we had to look at it from a hospitality perspective, hospitality is driven by corporate markets, by our domestic corporate markets, but the international travellers also are the top-up travellers for us. If you had to look at the Pretoria node itself, from a hospitality perspective, It runs on an occupancy that is on par with Sandton, which, as we know, Sandton is one of the sought-after destinations from a corporate and international leisure perspective. And because of occupancies in the existing hotels reaching these levels, it shows that there's demand for further growth, and hence why Protea Hotels and Marriott have decided to increase their interest there. Beyond that, you'll also find a lot of other developers showing commitment to this area. There's a convention centre that's going up as we speak. It's not associated to us, but it's going to bring an additional 8,500 seats of conferencing capacity into that node, which, to put that in perspective, the Sun International Sun City Casino provides 5,500 seats, and Monte Casino provides 2,200 seats. So it creates a huge demand for a new market into that area.
The city is in some quarters seen as past its glory days. Still got grand buildings there. Are we going to see a sort of rebuilding and refurbishing of these formerly glorious buildings there?
I think from an urban planning perspective, you'll find that the idea is to open up new nodes outside of the traditional commerce zone being the traditional areas, and hence why Menlyn has been this next node that a lot of development has been put into. The product that we've built there, the Protea Hotel Fire and Ice, is very trendy, very contemporary, and in line with the brand being very lifestyle orientated. And you will find that the corporate buildings going up around us are following the same type of suit. So I think you'll get an eclectic mix of traditional Pretoria with the new nodes coming out around that from east and west with a more contemporary upmarket style to them.
Well, thank you for joining us. That's Nicholas Berenblatt, who's the Group Marketing Manager of Protea Hotels here in South Africa. We're talking about the business boom that's happening in the capital, Pretoria. Now, out of the pages and onto the screens is the main theme surrounding this year's International Book Week. Tomorrow is the launch of the Digital Summit at the National Library of South Africa, where a panel of experts will be discussing the future of the book in a fast-moving digital age. Now, joining us today in studio here, we have the CEO of the South African Book Development Council, Elita van der Sant, and the Managing Director of Pan Macmillan, Terry Morris. Good morning, ladies. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
If I can start with you, Elita, tell us about the changing times that we're living in. Some people feel that the book is under threat. I think that's not the case. How do you view this?
The book remains the book. It remains a story to be told, and it remains content that we make available to everyone in the country, whether it's scholars or just you reading a book. So the book pretty much remains the same. What is changing is the formats in which we make the book available, and digital being one of the formats in which the book is now accessible.
Terry, the significance of this summit here in South Africa. Tell us about that.
I think South Africa often lags behind international markets in terms of e-books, but we've caught up significantly, and really this is an opportunity for all stakeholders, government, consumers, booksellers, retailers, publishers to get together and to look at what's happening in our market, how we can make books more accessible through digital, and really how we can all work together, creating standards and growing the market.
What are the current issues and challenges that the industry is faced with here in South Africa today?
Particular to e-books and making e-books available, of the challenges we see is that we don't necessarily have all the skills, because we're now speaking about skill sets which is both digital and publishing that we need to bring together in order. So we need to see the skills improving. We need to see infrastructure available to access the books, the e-books. We need to see more books becoming available cheaper through data and so on. So there's a number of things that we need to be looking at.
Terry, what is the impact that e-books have had on the publishing sector?
I see it as positive. It means that we have grown the market. We can access more readers. Books are traditionally quite difficult to access in this country. You have libraries, but retailers are not widely available throughout the country. So e-books makes content accessible, and it also allows us to take books where we would have classics, where maybe we would have sold 10 or 15 copies, and put it out there to a wider market. So really it's about making sure that our heritage and the books that we should be publishing and should be available can be made available.
So it's not one or the other, it's finding that balance between the two and making it work. Elitha, tell us about the growth then of ebooks in South Africa and where you would like to see digital reading go.
We see, and Terry can speak about this specifically, that currently they're selling at 1% of the total output as trade publishers are selling through the ebook channels. We would like to see that increase, specifically libraries being an access point for books and specifically for ebooks also as they're rolling out infrastructure, that there are more purchases of ebooks through the library system so that we can increase those figures.
Terry, now you've got some fantastic speakers coming in for the summers. Tell us about the speakers that are coming and what the expectation from yourselves are of them.
So we have a range of speakers. Elite has been organising it. We have people from the education sector, from government, we have someone like I'm trying to remember all the names, but someone from Brazil who's coming in to give an experience of BRICS countries and an emerging market from Brazil. So really a wide range of stakeholders, communications department. Also PwC have done a digital study on ebooks, and they will be presenting some of the findings.
And really what it is about is that we're all doing ebooks in our corners. So we're getting everyone together in the room for the first time. So we have libraries there, we have 5 government departments there, we have publishers there, we have booksellers there, we have writers there. So everyone is going to be sitting together and looking at how we make more ebooks available and what some of the challenges are and how we collectively create the solutions to make ebooks available in South Africa.
Well, ladies, that's fantastic to hear, actually, that it's not one or the other. We can make it work in the digital world. There is still a place for the book. That's what I believe. Thank you for joining us today. Of course, we're talking about, International Book Week. We've got the Digital Summit at the National Library of South Africa. We'll talk about how do we move reading into the digital age. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Now, in conclusion, the 2015 Cricket World Cup has reached the critical knockout stage, and it's also crunch time for South African cricket, who've not won a single knockout match since their readmission in 1996. The Proteas lock horns with Sri Lanka in the first quarter-final at the Sydney Cricket Ground in Australia tomorrow morning, South African time. Both teams suffered 2 defeats in the pool stage of the competition, but as former champions and 2011 runners-up, Sri Lanka will start as the favourites. Now, South African coach Russell Dominga acknowledges their experience in big tournaments and believes that it will be a close contest. Our specialist sports journalist Craig Morais is in Sydney. He joins us now on the line. Good morning, Craig, or good evening, I should say. Craig, how have the Proteas' preparation been going for this match?
Good morning to all your viewers there. No, it's been very good, Evan. They were really hard at work this week. A bit of a surprise, a lot of the media here can't believe it, but they have a day off today, a day before the match. There's no practice or anything because I think what's happened in the past, they analyze things too much. So they're actually not playing cricket today. They try and get their mind off the game. I think it's just to try and make them relax as much as possible. And Mike Horn, the adventurers, they seem to get on well with him. He just brings a fresh energy. So that's the way they're trying to, approach this game mentally. They've done all the hard work in the week and they've got a day off. I must say there's a steely determination with AB de Villiers today was no matter what they do, if they lose the toss, they'll do whatever they have to do to win a game of cricket.
Craig, now we're at the Sydney Cricket Ground. At times, not our best ground. Sri Lanka will feel a little bit at home. Tell us about the makeup of the team for this match. What do you think?
Well, in the press conference during the week, Russell Dominga basically he said, he's got a gut feeling about Quinton de Kock, and he mentioned Adam Gilchrist, who in 2007 had hardly scored a run and scored 148 in the final, and he just has this gut feeling. So it looks like they're going to persevere with Quinton de Kock. Faf du Plessis will come back in the side at number 3, and I think the unlucky player will be Farhan Bahardin, who got got an unbeaten 60 off about 30 balls against the UAE. So I think Quinton de Kock is going to be very lucky indeed, but it just means too many changes. It means if he's left out, A.B. de Villiers has to take the gloves, he has to captain the side, Riley Rousseau has to open the batting. So there's too many changes. So I think that's the side that they will be going with.
Craig, thank you very much for that update. Craig Morea will keep us updated, of course, if we win or lose tomorrow. That's our man on the spot in Sydney, Craig Morea, giving us an update, telling us that there's a good vibe around the South African cricket side, but there's always been a good vibe around the South African cricket side. Let's hope that us here on social media back home don't pull out the C word tomorrow at about lunchtime. That's where I leave it. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a rebroadcast then at 5 a.m. the following morning. We also stream live on YouTube at that time, with the show available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.